avenues all intersecting here to kind of help support kids. The data is the data, and we know that, and I think there's some things we can take from it. But by and large, that's the most important piece. I'm excited that, for Genesee schools, we have some partners here, and having a chance to work with them now for a year and a half, that we just recently opened, a medical wellness center, both behavioral and medical health for our community in Genesee. And so that's an excitement piece, but it's all about people. We'll talk, I'm sure, later in questioning about resources from a monetary point of view and how we can sustain things. But by and large, it's all of us here tonight.
And I guess I would probably use two words: integration and organization. So having an organization such as the Prevention Council that organizes this, and then when you look across this row of 7, and then we have, we're sitting here at a church, with the pastor sitting here, and you're realizing the integration that this community, the county has. I remember a year ago, you may say, okay, Phil, I've never met you, that's fine. A year ago, I was working with the lobbyists to help get the clinic into the Genesee schools, and working with each and every one of these. Maybe maybe have not met them individually, but working with the organizations from the top down and say, okay, how can we reach this community? And I would probably say also, maybe Genesee Township is maybe just a little bit different, but for the most part, the stuff we deal with out here in the rural communities, we are able to deal with some of the things that cities can't deal with. We can deal with this prevention, and it becomes a big issue for us. And for me, that's vitally important, because we start dealing with prevention, then we keep families together. We keep families together, then the kids can learn. When the kids can learn, then the economic status changes for generations. So really, in my opinion, the organization here to bring us all together can really make changes generationally for our communities.
I'm pretty loud, but I'll use the microphone there.
You're all wrapped up in them.
So really good things that I heard there, and I want to kind of make a point of emphasis on those when we move forward, and I can get off on a tangent because I've worked with all these guys individually in some different aspect, whether it's just conversations, learning more with them, and all the discussions that we've had. I'm going to toss it right back to Representative Green, and before I kind of expand on some of the things, I want to know what concerns you the most about substance use and mental health disorders in our community.
What concerns me the most? So I'll go back. I spent 20 years as a pastor. Grew up just north here in the booming metropolis of Mayville, and I spent 4 years in Wisconsin, 10 years in New York, then came back. And so one of the things that concerns me the most is, for generations, it's just been accepted. Substance abuse out in the rural communities. Hey, a group of kids going after school to the gravel pit to go swimming, and that's just how it is. And so that's very concerning to me. Another component of the mental health is the transition the whole system is in. The late 1980s, we had a very robust state hospital system. A federal court ruled, and we had to dismantle the court system. And I think we're going in the right direction, community-based, but the transition has been very difficult, and so a lot of people falling through the cracks. And so I'm hoping over the course of the next 6 years that I'm back in office that we can hasten that transition, make it a little bit smoother, that people are reintegrating and getting the services, but on the flip side is they're getting at the levels and that they need, and not just falling through the cracks.
Okay, yeah, I think two things kind of concern me the most, and I think Representative Green touched on something that I think is fundamental just to communities at large, and that's when you talked about the family and being able to strengthen our families. And there's some real challenges there. We see that every day. Every one of us can share the experiences there. So when we talk about mental health, that there's certainly a relationship with the way our families are operating. from my hat being a superintendent, you know, we've been able to, over the last several years, based on funding, being able to put together some great programming to support our kids. One of which this year, Hope Squad, a peer-to-peer suicide prevention program, where our kids are talking, who's most likely to know if there's an issue? Well, the friend. And you know, working with our kids to then question, persuade, and then ultimately refer. We trained our entire staff in the QPR to begin the school year to help support that. You know, obviously the wellness center and the options there are great. My fear is, you know, like anything, can we sustain these beyond a lot of grant funds that have funneled into all of our coffers, which are great, but some of those are one time. We don't really know, and again, that always is the case, and you and I know, I'll go back to my first response, it's about people. We will figure a way out. But that is something that, you know, I do think through.
Think back to school perspective as a matter of, though there are plenty of resources and we've become more vigilant about being able to talk about mental health, I think that there are still several barriers to dealing with mental health. And the ramifications on the school system seem to be that because we have the students for that amount of time and that length of the year and everything in between, that we should be the master of what takes place with these things. We are so dependent on the outside resources as educators to be able to see where are we at, what are we doing. An example would be to call, you know, protective services in a situation, to call GHS in a certain situation. But because it's mental health, there's some restrictions on how that communication can go back and forth. And the end result ends up a lot of times as a student is still brought back to school with these cases, and we're held responsible to try to figure out how to navigate these things. So on a school perspective, I think that's probably the number one concern that I have, or a challenge that I have. And number two would be, Brett said it was sustainability. We have got an awesome amount of resources coming through the channels right now that are flowing through like no tomorrow, and we are grabbing everything we possibly can because we don't know how long we're going to be able to keep them, and we don't know when the next time that train's coming back around to be able to grab resources on the K-12 system.
And if I may add just one piece, and I know I had my turn, but to that point, you know, the other thing, you know, is finding the trained and certified people at times. For instance, social work. It is a very difficult position to fill to help support kids, and so you might hear a lot about a teacher shortage, and that's certainly true. We're also in some of these key areas also finding it very difficult to bring forward.
I'm gonna kind of limbo here because I don't know if I want to use the mic or.
Yeah,
And so I guess I could go. Can you repeat the question for me? Really quick?
And I want to also say, hey, if you feel like you have something to supplement someone else's answer, please jump right back in. This is a discussion we're having. I know you guys are all esteemed panelists that we're having here, but please, if you have something that you want to add to someone else or heard about, please add to it. But Dante, the question is, what concerns you most about substance use and mental health disorders in our community?
Well, once again, I can go back to this, and I'm sure all of us can. We talk about stigma. Stigma has played a big role in why people haven't received the help. Now we have resources for them, but stigma still plays a role in some parts of the community in regards to why people don't want to speak up, or why a youth may not speak up and begin to self-harm and go from that self-harm into something more serious. So I think stigma is something that's still of concern in judging those who may be in a spot where they are having challenges. So I think that we still have to work that out as a community.
As part of the stigma, I just would like to add to that is, I see that there are sometimes some generational stigmas where the youth right now are more vocal and they're more open and accepting within their peer group to talk about what's going on or mental health issues, but their parents might be a little bit wishy-washy about it. Grandparents or aunts are definitely like, that's something we don't speak about, and you're going to embarrass our family. And so there are still some stigmas that come along with that. And as we see kids in primary care, you know, we'll talk to them about, you know, your depression scores or your anxiety scores, or like you just don't look like you're navigating these things in life very well right now and what's really going on. And the kids will often be like, I would go talk to a counselor, like I would be happy to go see a therapist and somebody that I can, you know, kind of talk through these things that are happening and learn a better way, because like I don't sleep at night and I now have eating issues and like lots of things that come out of that. And the parents are like, oh no, I really don't want them talking because I don't want it revealed what's really going on at home. And that is, it's a concern. And it's like, it's difficult for us to try to overcome that, to get the kids the help that they need. So stigma, particularly across some of the different generations, I think is still an obstacle for our youth to access some of the mental health services that are already available. And, you know, when their mental health needs are neglected, it just really opens the doors for them to start self-medicating and go down that avenue of substance use. So.
Yeah, I would agree with that completely. I'm in the trenches. I'm talking to these kids daily. I see them from all ages, from kindergarten all the way up to 12th grade, some even a little bit older that have graduated. And it really honestly comes down to family. Families are either helping these kids get these substances, or they're, you know, telling them that they don't need to talk about these personal mental health issues at school because somebody's going to call CPS and we don't want that noise all again. These kids tell me these things all the time. It's constantly like, my parents, you know, they don't want me talking to somebody here because they're afraid that something's going to happen to our household. Or my parents, you know, they've taken my phone so I'm not able, because I give them resources for like, there's texting lines and like resources that they can use on their cell phones, but they're not able to access their cell phones after they get home from school. So there's all kinds of different difficulties that these kids are facing when it comes to, you know, basically at home. Their home environment is causing a lot of these issues lately.
I'd have to say there's a couple different problems here. First off, as a police officer, right, we're expected to respond to a mental health crisis of a teenager, an adult, adolescents, you name it, somebody that's having suicidal, homicidal thoughts. 99% of the officers are not properly trained in dealing with mental health whatsoever, you know. Now, I'm part of the crisis intervention team myself through GHS. It was a week-long training on how de-escalation, dealing with people with mental health crisis. You know, the system's kind of bogged down too, through even, I don't know, obviously, I mean, you guys are swamped. I mean, as far as GHS and, you know, there's a ton of resources coming down the chain, but, you know, the system can only handle so much, and that's the thing, where everything's gonna come back to one thing only is, at the childhood, right? What's going on in these kids' homes? You know, childhood trauma. These kids have to deal with poor finances, you know, economical pain, and, you know, parents that are either drug addicts, alcoholics, and they're just trying to strive and push through, you know, and these kids are relying on their friends to continue to push for themselves forward. Anything to claw their way out of the trench. But, you know, when it comes down to it is, you know, resilient. Kids are always gonna be resilient, you know, so I think that's what's most scary.
Yeah, Anthony, one thing we didn't talk about really as much, we get the mental health side. I know when the question was repeated, you know, we didn't really get into the substance abuse piece, but I think Officer Becker started to talk a little bit about that, but it's almost like the normalization of marijuana use. I mean, we can look at the data sets. I mean, look, it's like when we were kids, and I shared this story, I think, at the trailer, you know, moms and dads often would have smoked, and so then that was sort of like, oh, it must be okay as a kid. Well, now it's, marijuana use and our kids, that is what they see day in and day out, whether it's for coping mechanisms or what have you. Again, that is a worry. And not that we think we all see that.
And I think I'd like to add in a little bit. So my last 6 years in full-time ministry, I was a Christian school principal. And so we talked about some of the marijuana use, but as well, it's this stupid thing. So we hear down there, they say, look, the parents won't let their kids use it at home. No kidding. I don't let my kids, I try not to let my kids use it at home. Why? When I was in school, you got into a fight at school, or, Christian school fight is sort of like, whatever you make. Anyway, but, it's a big deal. It weighs on you. Well, we'd go to ball practice, maybe it affect you, then we go home. And it was 28 cents a minute to make a long distance phone call when I was a kid. Now, these kids are connected to those same people, and sometimes, and then they get on their Xbox, and it's crazy to me that they never unplug from the pressures that they were under. And for me, I live an hour and a half away from Lansing. Lansing is a pressure cooker. I come home every night, almost every night, because at some point you gotta unplug, and we are almost teaching our kids not to unplug and to stay on social media, to text, and all that pressure, and then they watch that whole circle, and it just drives them. And so I would probably say, I'm not sure if our data set hit cell phone usage.
Although it does, and I know on the one slide that resonated, the mental health was the biggest concern at 82%. Yet, if you look down that list, video gaming, okay, 17%, that's these. You go down to social and peer approval, that's these. If you look at bullying or media influence, that's this and this.
Yeah.
Then if you look at those all combined, is that not necessarily intersecting in that bottom line? And again, there's some literature out there that supports some of that as well, but I agree.
As a 47-year-old, I'm still trying to figure out how to turn this stupid thing off.
So with that being said, that goes to marketing, easy targeting of marketing, and it goes into substance, and it goes into self-harm, it goes into suicidal ideations, and like the phone, it's very, very imperative that we do something about that as well. But it gives them the opportunity, the big companies, opportunity to market to our kids whatever substances that we as adults do not necessarily know about. So.
And let me run off that one. I pay a lot of money to run political campaigns. And one of the things we do is we micro-target. We capture IP addresses. I can actually send a TV commercial to you because I have your IP address, and I can send a different one to you, and you're sitting right next to each other. And so what we don't realize is that type of marketing that our kids are getting, and it's just there, and it's targeted. So I've been working with RJ Reynolds, big tobacco company. I've been working with, yesterday, the Michigan Beer and Wine Wholesalers, that they, in their both of them, in their top 3 topics is we have bad actors in our communities that are marketing, whether it's bubblegum flavored vapes, because every one of us up here on the panel are looking for bubblegum flavor, or hard Mountain Dew, hard Arizona tea, Sunny D, and even those people that we sometimes would feel like we are in opposition to are saying, look, we got to stop this putting hard Mountain Dew in the cooler right next to regular Mountain Dew. And on a high level, these organizations are realizing that, but it all comes down to that marketing. And some of the ones that have gotten their hands slapped the hardest, the tobacco industry, are saying, look, we want to follow the rules, but we also want the companies that are buying from China and shipping their junk in, we want them to play by the rules too in our local shops. So it's a very interesting world because I've gotten into this, and it's like, never would have expected partners in that capacity, but the micro targeting is amazing.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of that as well. I just want to get, if I could get a brief show of hands, how many of you had to pass by a marijuana retailer or a billboard on your way here? I know some of the most people here live in this community, but yeah. So it's about 85–90% of the people that are in this room right now have passed by it, and that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the environment that these kids are living in. They have to see this or generally exposed to it. That's what the data was showing us. Perception of risk dropping for it. It's very much targeted. We've heard in neighboring communities that they're targeting the Chromebooks that they supply at schools with marijuana advertising of local retailers. So we know that this is happening in neighboring communities. We're aware of it, and so we want to be able to just gather under one roof right now to be able to understand what's going on. Just recently that summer, and I just want to humbly say this, we'll get back to panel discussion. We looked at all the marijuana retailers in Genesee County. We did an environmental scan, looked at advertising, marketing, the built environment of them, whether they're in the correct zoning districts. And so we're using this information as a springboard to helping with a lot of the marijuana tax revenue and helping to be able to reinvest it back into prevention, being able to generalize the youth that we have. We finished the reports for them. They're absolutely beautiful. I'm sorry if that was a lie. But yeah, it's one of those things where we're utilizing this information that we have from the built environment because it's generally new and we're trying to understand it. We're trying to reinvent how everything works. But I've heard a lot of great things from these panelists thus far. And one of the biggest things, and going back to the one question, was obviously the generational aspect of it, the trauma, the mental health, parents carrying that burden around and being in the same household as their child and carrying it on with them. And we've seen some good things positive-wise that students are willing to speak up about it. The theme for today's town hall event is obviously communities talking. That's what we're here for. We're trying to listen to everybody. We're trying to gain perceptions. These guys have done an amazing job thus far. But got an underlying kind of theme to it, and it's kind of continuing the conversation, so to speak. So this last question, and I'll pass it off to Officer Becker, is just what kind of supports are needed in your community to better address the issues that we were just all speaking about?
I think for as far as like support, I think that parents need to be educated on where trauma starts, because trauma leads to attempting to self-medicate, which turns to meth, heroin, and everything else, alcohol, prescription drugs. You know, if it all starts at home, like I was saying earlier, if you educate the parent's aware of the problem, like, hey, I'm doing this wrong. I'm doing this, I'm causing trauma to my child. And then it's getting passed on. It's a generational trauma. It continues. And then that kid starts using. And then, or, you know, the next step is they're trying to self-medicate or they're trying to be peer pressured into using. You know, just having that discussion and convincing these parents that are working 18-hour days, that are, you know, just trying to make it through to pay the bills, just to have like an hour discussion with their kid, you know. And I think that, you know, if the parents can't, right, maybe something along those discussions within the schools, you know, open discussions in a classroom for an hour, or at an assembly event or something, you know, or in churches, you know. Let's talk about it. That's where it's going to start. Breaking down that stigma within the community, and not just in like within our own homes, but also out in the community, like churches, schools, and so forth.
And he's right about that. A lot of our parents don't seem to understand the challenges that our youth are facing. I know that we were talking about the negativities of like having a cell phone, but there's no home phones anymore. So when I was saying something about like kids not having access to that, they don't have access to call somebody if they're having problems, when parents don't listen to them, or if they don't feel like they have a mental health problem. There are texting services out there, and you know, we give our kids a lot of these information. There's different apps that, you know, we talk about because these kids they're using it. They're going to use their phones. They're going to have all of these things in their face. So I feel it's important, like letting them know that there's other resources other than using it for gaming and whatnot, but also allowing parents to understand that there are benefits for some of these things. And education, like he had mentioned, it is really important, you know, to have parent involvement, which we see a huge lack of. If parents were to even open up and listen to their kids for like 5 minutes, or even talk to a mental health professional on like a consult, like, hey, what's going on with my kid? I feel would be very, very, very beneficial throughout the entire community.
Yeah, as part of that, I do agree that, the parent education is important, because when we know better, we hope that people would do better. But, it's kind of difficult sometimes for parents to accept that, because it's, pretty convicting to them, and they're not all ready to, not all of them are ready to make some changes, so then they just don't wanna hear it anymore. So, parent education, I think, is important, because like some of the data that was presented this evening on parents that don't perceive like marijuana use or alcohol is really being an issue for themselves or for the youth. And that's pretty startling, that they don't perceive it as being a problem, so therefore they're not going to be highly motivated to make any changes to address that. So I do think that parent education is important, but it might not be completely like impactful to make the changes for the youth in a lot of cases. And I think we really have to just continue to be a safe place for the youth to come, to empower them, to educate them, because their window of being a youth is really short compared to their lifelong journey of being an adult. And right now they are under the authority of their parents in that household, but that's just for a small time. And to prepare them to make good choices when they can exercise their own free will and have that knowledge to set them up for lifelong success, not just this school year or get you out of high school or what that might be. So continuing to reach out to parents and trying to promote that with them, but I think that really continuing to empower the youth and just help them to build that resilience and give them that knowledge, because they're going to be adults soon, and they can break those cycles and carry forward.
You took all my stuff.
I take that as a compliment.
Just to go along with that education, but I think resources for parents is needed as well. I think that's a big thing. And the reason why I say that is because we can empower the youth, but if the parents are disempowering the youth, then we are doing the youth a disservice. So I really feel as though education and empowerment for the youth, but resources for the parent is very important. We're pouring a lot of resources into programming, schools, things of that nature, but we really need to sit back and take time to even listen to the parent as well, so we can understand their struggle on raising a child in this generation. Because guess what? It's hard to deal with these youth in this generation. And it's hard for parent, grandparent, all that kind of stuff now. So with that being said, I think more resources for parents will be more acceptable for what we are looking for the future.
You are a lot more eloquent than I am, because I have a different avenue to go with this. I think we've got a lot of resources available, and it's kind of like, leading the horse to water but not being able to force it to drink. I think we're missing some things and some accountability factors with the resources. And so I certainly appreciate that the parents need to coach and being able to do that, but there's got to be some token to be able to force them, in a sense, to be able to say, hey, here's an avenue to support your child. You need to do A, B, and C. Let us help you do it. Not like it's, certainly court or anything of that sort, but it's a matter of the accountability factor to say, hey, if this is a partnership, we've got a community that's reaching out for your child. We've got all these avenues that are reaching out for the child. The one missing piece happens to be the parental support. Yes, how can we hold you up, hold your hand, and be able to walk you through this? But I think there has to be an accountability measure to the resources that are available to our parents. And I think that's where, we get kind of hamstringed a little bit in the school system to be able to say, well, I know we did everything we could, but we didn't get any further than where we were. And so I think that's part of the challenge that we face.
Right, if I can, real quick, because we would just write down a line saying, hey, resources for families is exactly what we need. Mike just hit it right on the head, and people were clapping him up saying, hey, we need to have some personal wants and accountability for it. So I was going to try and ask that question, is which kind kind of resources would entice parents? Or what kind of ways do we frame that message for parents to be more enticed?
Yeah, so to that, and again, I echo the comments thus far, but I also think we may have to, and again, think beyond the traditional means of getting the message out. No different than what was just shared. How are we doing with the medium of that message? Are we using the IP addresses to reframe? Because moms and dads are on their phones just as much as the kids. I've been in meetings where they've been on, and it is just an important meeting. So, I don't, even tonight's town hall is great, but yet we know there's other parents I wish were here, for that. So we really have to begin reframing, because it's no different than some of the events we hold. We can put a lot of effort into an evening and get 4 people. And so again, that effort isn't maybe as fruitful as we want it to be. So I think it's that. But then also to a point, it's also getting access. Again, in our county, in certain areas, the access to these supports isn't there. And so being able to coordinate that, in addition to the accountability, I think is some things we should be continuing to think through.
I think one of the struggles is, as we destigmatize, we don't want to normalize. So we destigmatize, hey, I have some mental health, I need help. But then when we go the next step and say, it's okay, we all struggle with. And then we normalize, oh, okay, so having substance abuse is just normal. No, it's not. I think, so in our communities, we've done some very interesting things. Coming back to the foundational level of family. We know that a kid who has come from an intact family is more likely to finish high school, even finish high school, economic factors increase. So thus, is this dichotomy. We want this, but to get it, we don't want that either. So some of the things we've done, drug courts, alcohol courts, veterans courts, where we are diverting people out of the criminal justice system so that they are able to come back. And one of the fallacies of human nature is we all believe everybody's just like us. I believe every parent's just like me as a parent. And so, talking with high-level government officials, I would never condone somebody doing something to a kid that I would not do to my own kid. I agree. However, my kids aren't swinging knives at each other. Right? So when that escalates, then I'm going to put my hands on my kid because they're swinging. You understand what I'm saying? So we have to make sure that from top of I wish, man, I pray and I wish that we did not need a foster care system in our state. But guess what? When I believe that everybody's just like me, I believe that every kid should go home. The problem is, there are kids at a juvenile justice facility north of here that have petitioned the court to stay at that juvenile justice facility because they're just ready to graduate from high school. Sometimes our fear is, let's get them back to the family, and it's like, no. The best thing for that kid was to remove him from that family. And so we have some very tough situations, right, that we're having to deal with. But I think some of the stuff for our community, number one, the drug court, keeping people out of jail, out of prison, so that they can associate with their family. But then number two is we need to also take those individuals. They probably grew up in a split home. And so how do you teach mom to be a mom? Because it's not natural. How do you teach dad to be a dad? And having those next level supports, sort of a wraparound service. How do you teach adults that yes, you may make a lot more money standing out on the street corner selling white stuff, but that's not beneficial. Well, wait a second, now I have cash. And so trying to teach, giving them that wraparound job supports, which our community does very well with. And so I think just looking at just stopping and saying, okay, look, I wish everybody were just like me, but they're not. And so therefore, since they're not, now, is removing a kid from a family the best thing? For some kids it might be. And then we need GHS. We need all these other organizations that come and say, okay, look, we're just going to accept that they don't have a dad. And so we're going to do our best to mentor them and give them what they need. And then hopefully, when they get old enough, they can be a dad, but they've never had that model for them. And so I really appreciate what we're doing to try to keep families intact, but I think as well we need to pause and just stop and say, let's just get our mindset that we want to let our parents involved. However, what about those ones that aren't? Where can we get those mentoring opportunities to just come alongside them and say, okay, look, yeah, I know, I hate it, but this is just the way it is. So whether it's baseball or whatever.
So, to go back to answering the question about the resources that I feel that we probably need in the community, seeing that we are having our mock community clinic now here at the Genesee School, I feel like more schools need this type of product. More schools need to have somebody that is on staff or near to be able to have these mental health resources. You know, we do a lot of education with these kids. We do a lot of, teaching them, the factors that they need to be able to become productive adults. There's a lot of desperation in these high schools right now because they feel like there's nowhere to go. They see their parents and their grandparents all continuing this path, and being able to have somebody that's actually going to support them and be like, hey, we have all of these resources because they're out there and these kids just don't know it. So having more of these smaller clinics out at the schools are going to be a huge factor. I cannot express enough how amazing it's been just for the short 6 months we've been there.
As far as JVRC, it is impossible to get a child lodged. How many times I've sat here and called the on-call referee for domestic violence, for little sister trying to stab older brother with a knife. Call on-call referee. No, we won't lodge. Sorry. Release them off. Okay, so you want me to put this kid back into a dangerous situation and cause this other child more harm? Perfect sense, and that's what we need. Is honestly JVRC, they need a juvenile detention center. Absolutely, they need to open it back up or whatever's going on over there in the courts. I don't know. Put my pay grade on that, but I mean, as a patrolman, that is one of the most frustrating things. Is that you're going to be back there in 30 minutes. And you got to figure it out. Here you go. Try to be Mr. Superman, save it. Figure it out. And then you got these parents that are mad at us. Do something about it. What? There's nothing I can do. So
if I can say, there is some systematic issues with the GCPC aspect because, I've had the opportunity to work in the juvenile justice system north of here and throughout the state. And what ends up happening is they've closed some of these facilities down to where they can't really move kids from GVRC to their next treatment facility that they should be at. So there's some, there is some systematic things that are bogging down families as well. And don't get me wrong, there are some places that are doing some very good work, but there's some things within the state that has to be fixed, and I'm not saying you.
I'm there with you.
But there's some things and I feel as though they are trying to do that with more community things to do in the community and community corrections. But once again, there's some things that we can fix, and there's some things the state has to fix too. So
yeah.
That's why I chose nobody.
I just want to also express that we have time open for public comment as well, so if you have something you want to write on a card, we'll be by collecting those. Or if you have questions, you can raise your hand and you don't use a microphone. Yeah. While we're potentially doing that, I just have one question. First of all, I just want to say thank you guys all again. I mean, the conversations that we had today is incredible. Really, thus far, helping us in each of all our different respects. But as we kind of move into the comment section and allow the public to kind of really think about some of the things that have been said today and offer some suggestions or comments, I just kind of thinking to myself, you guys have all worked in different disciplines, you work with different communities from different school districts, different states, some crossing over from both Genesee County and Lapeer. If you could just speak broadly or detailed, and it doesn't have to be long, just broadly or detailed, how would you envision a healthy and thriving community? Curveball, yes, I know, but broadly or detailed?
I think it takes a community to build a family. You know, going back to the systems back in the day, you know, it takes the whole community to have a family. You know, being able to trust your neighbors, being able to, you know, let the kids go outside and play, being able to talk to people. Like, nobody talks to each other anymore. I feel like having a thriving community would have that communication piece. It's in the name, basically. That's all I have to say. You're welcome.
I don't know what a perfect community is. I think that's one of the hardest questions I would like have to answer on this panel. What is a perfect community? One that doesn't have violence, one that doesn't have any issues, and I've never seen it. But I guess I would want the closest thing to that. So I guess a cartoon like where Doug Funny community Bluffington. I would like to live in Bluffington. Yes.
I think probably for me, this is an interesting question. I grew up north here in Mayville, went to college in Florida, moved to Wisconsin, moved to Western New York, and the majority of the reason I moved back here is because I wanted my kids to grow up in this community like I did. And meaning, look, you're missing a stick of butter for the chocolate chip cookies? Ride to the neighbor's house. You know, we had a baseball field mowed into the field across the road, and we lived out in the country, and we'd have bikes all over the place just playing baseball. And then when I drive around now, how many basketball rims, if they're in the driveway, how many basketball rims are just dangling, or there's a backboard on the basketball? You drive around to the baseball fields, the soccer fields, unless something is organized, there's nobody there. And I wanted my kids just to have that freedom to be able to get a group of kids together, go play basketball. Get a group of kids together, go play softball. And I think some of that just comes down to we've made life so busy. And that's another one of these things. We're constantly, it's go, 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 go. And it's like, okay, you know what? Let's just back off. I have a buddy of mine, my barber, and he lives in Flint, and in his neighborhood was Glenn Robinson and some of these Flint guys playing basketball. It's just like it's like we've lost that freedom, we've lost that neighborhood. I didn't care about the political persuasion of my neighbor. If I wanted chocolate chip cookies, I was going to talk to him. And so sometimes we just got to put away some of the divisiveness and just say, look, it's okay. But I think as well, you see nature happening. You look at any new house, tell me where the front door is. You don't know where the front door is in any new house. And likewise, you know, if I did something wrong at the friend's house, I got whooped there, and then I was expecting one when I got home. And so just that whole integration of being a community was something that I looked forward to in coming back. And I think what we have here, while maybe it's not perfect, what we have here really is special.
Yeah, you know, I don't know what, you know, you're not going to find a perfect community because we're imperfect people. We really are. Life is life. We're all going to face challenges at some point, and in hardship, whether that's disease, loss of life, you name it. You know, all of us can speak and think to that. But one thing that I do know, where we're at tonight is certainly missing from a lot of communities, and being grounded in faith. Whatever that may look like, I know I hold my own, but I think being able to be here with multifaceted groups of people, that's really what our families need. And again, I think being grounded in something greater is really the key piece.
I think the perfect community is perfectly imperfect. Also, one of my favorite quotes, stars cannot shine without darkness. Okay? We can't embrace the good times without going through the hard times. Remember what I was saying earlier about resilient. We as humans are resilient. We continue to push forward just like time. So, perfect community will never exist, but we can try to always pursue our own happiness. And that's where it's gonna end.
Give it up for all these guys. It's certainly not easy to get up here and be a representation of the community you serve, and we appreciate all the work that you guys do and take on these questions, the hard-hitting questions that we provide. While we have a second, does anyone have any comments, or they can, yes?
Yeah, I just want to be a voice. I don't have a question, but I sit in here with 8 individuals up front here, 13 individuals out here. I know I'm here voluntary as a father, as a ex-addict, driving myself to come here. I would like to know what parents are here, because you guys are like 2 to 1 right now. You guys should be packing like 10 to 1. Because people are serious about their voice and what they want to accomplish. Why would it be 2 to 1? This parents will get the door knocked out. People are very serious. But what interests me is the education of that we don't have a blueprint to be a parent, husband, or whatever. But the video games, what do we do with things? And these are areas of interest for me. Well, one thing stated was micro-targeting. Do you guys feel that I feel I need to stop and smell the roses if I'm going to make decisions, choices, and all that? That's me micro-targeting instead of giving some of the stimulation. I believe that. I've done that. But I just wanted to voice my opinion on that.
Thank you.
And we appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay, we talked about one facility to help their child or himself get the therapy. We talked about maybe they understand the lack of resources out there available. But sometimes I think parents are lazy. They know a problem exists with their children and they don't want to deal with it. So they pass the buck to the school system. Because some parents think the school is the problem solver for everything. If their children don't know how to behave in school, it's a school problem. Whatever going on with their child, if they're not getting their lesson and they flunk it, parents don't know they're going to bear the responsibility. They push it off on the school. The school nowadays is to take up for every problem our children experience.
The school's not equipped, so now you liar here.
And that's why I said, having, these mini clinics at all the schools is very, very, very important. We do that every day. We educate these kids. We talk to parents. We try to get that out there. And let them know, hey, these things are happening. We need to be, helped at home as well. We do a lot of parent education. If the parents will chat with us.
That's a big piece too.
That's why I said it.
Parents, I'm going to play devil's advocate here slightly, okay? Because I know there's some parents who may be afraid to discipline their kid because they may have had some issues in the past and have had CPS involvement or things of that nature. So once again, how do we engage them to become more productive, and how do we engage them to accept more accountability? I want to say resources, but it's hard to really gauge. It's really hard because once again, at the end of the day, the person that's really hurting the most is the child. And so I can play devil's advocate because I've actually been a CPS investigator, going to the school, going to the home, and then it's like, okay, the kid doesn't want to say anything. The teacher reported this. I go to the parents there. I don't know what you're talking about. So it's just a web of systematic issues that lead to our kids' traumatic life.
To add, I think parents are a little confused sometimes, to kind of bring it back to the phone. mean, I'm probably the youngest individual here, and this wasn't a thing when I was in high school. Me and my husband have a 1-year-old and a baby on the way, and it's like, we talk about this all the time. Like, these aren't going away. What are we gonna do? Like, there are great resources, but yet we should take it away. Like, there's this like push and pull, and it's confusing to parents. You know, I know there needs to be accountability, but as a hands-on parent, and I hope you do a good job, it's still very confusing even to me how to navigate some of the systems.
Yeah, and some of that is our software companies have done a good job, I'll say it that way. On every iPhone, there's parental controls. And you can bring it in, but navigating those parental controls, you know, and it's that learning process that we have to as adults go through. And I implemented the parental controls on my kid's phone. They weren't allowed to add any contacts to their list, and they weren't allowed to text or call anybody that wasn't a contact. And then we had some issues we had to work through, right? They weren't allowed to download an app unless I put a code in and such like that. Setting the amount of screen time, and then my kids ask me, how come you don't have screen time on yours? Well, we won't go there. So I think some of the software companies have done a good job making things available. What we have to do is figure out that they're available.
Yeah.
And then
But I think
figure
a
out
lot
from
of
there.
parents don't know a lot of that.
I have a passcode on our Dish account, the Dish network. And then all of a sudden one day it's like, oh yeah, the passcode's da-da-da-da-da. And then it's like, oh, crud.
What is it?
Now I just gave the kids the passcode account, and lo and behold, they're doing what kids do. So there are a lot of helps out there, and it's just figuring out as an adult how to use them and when to implement them. And you know, Google, I'm not sure what platforms you guys use. If you use Chromebooks at the schools, they have a tremendous amount of control. You know, when I was a school administrator, the school purchased the Chromebooks, and then we put our own software on it to lock it down. And I told them these are tools for schools and not games for kids. And so we blocked all of the games that they couldn't even go to the website, and then they figured out ways around that. So I think just a lot of it is doing the work as a parent, doing the work as an adult to figure, okay, look, this is on me. I'm paying $75 a month for my kid to have a phone. This is on me, and the benefits outweigh the detractions, but I'm gonna have to put some my own safeguards in there.
So that's where like the parent education aspect comes in for me, where I talk to the parents, like, hey, there are apps out there that will monitor even their IP address. You can put in a child's IP address, you put in their age, and it will block things that they can't see. So even if they're trying to Google something on their phones, if they're trying to use somebody else's stuff, they're still kind of logged into somewhat of an IP address. This is attached to like an individual. So regardless of what system they're using, it'll be on there, it can monitor those types of things. So just having that education piece, like, hey, I don't want my kid to have their phone at home because of this problem. I'm like, okay, cool, I understand that, but that's how they're using their resources for like their Calm apps or like their crisis texting services that I've given them. And you know, we're on the same page about being concerned about them at home. So if you use this app on your phone, it'll monitor them, it'll block things, and it'll also send you a screenshot of what they're trying to access. So it's just going out there and making sure that you're finding the most up-to-date resources. There's people coming out with apps all the time that will help parents out. It's just ask questions, you know, is Geek Squad still a thing? I'm not sure. You can go down and like talk to your Geek Squad. You can talk to like any person that does, you know, sets up your phone for you. If you're buying your kid a phone, hey, like how do I work the parental controls on this phone? As you're setting it up for me, can you show me? Every techie person will know how to help you out with that when you're going to buy a new service.
So Apple has, I'm not sniffing for a brand, Apple has the parental control, but also AT&T also has, I just learned this looking at my bill the other day. I'm like, oh, what's that? They have a filtering system that they make for free, and it's like, okay, some of these software companies, the government has done a pretty good job cracking out pretty hard on them, and they're realizing, okay, look, we need to make sure that we are putting some of these protections in place. So check with your phone provider, check with your phone manufacturer, and I almost guarantee that both of them will have some pretty rigorous filtering systems.
Yeah, I'd like to say first that I think this has been a great discussion. I've enjoyed the comments that everybody has to say. But I'd be interested in knowing what the panel thinks about the situation where you have a single parent family, where you've got a single mom trying to raise kids, or a single dad trying to raise a bunch of kids, or a parent who's not involved, one's not involved, one's trying to figure everything out. I mean, how do we address that type of situation?
We wish everybody was perfect. We know they're not. Okay, so while we wish and aspire to this for the future, we have to deal with people where they are. And so that's where some of the mentoring comes in. Law enforcement, I mean, you've probably seen videos of law enforcement, the community law enforcement get involved, pick up ball games, and there they are in their whole uniform, and they're playing pickup ball with them. But then also we end up with the mentoring that happens. What's the name of it? Flint has a gym that we're remodeling right now.
Burston Fieldhouse.
Burston. So we have different opportunities for mentoring, and it's all just sort of figuring out where they are, and that's what this is really about.
Yeah, along with the mentoring, even parent coaching, we provided some coaches to some moms and dads in the school year to kind of help them through and help them through some circumstances as well.
Sometimes we have to become their family, and that's important because I know, like for my family, my mom and dad were always the ones that all the neighborhood kids would come to. Hey, Mr. Jennings. Hey, Mr. Jennings. So sometimes we have to become that family. You guys, they come to you and they say, hey, you know what? I don't have this issue. I just want to say hi. Can I sit with you and have lunch? That's the important piece. Sometimes the kid that doesn't have family is embraced by more love when they're away from their family. And I know it sounds weird, but it's really true. Like, I really feel as though there were times I could say in my life where I got more love from auntie, uncle, friend than I did when I got home. And not to say it came from a bad family or anything, but I knew that when I was in trouble, I didn't want to go home.
Long drive.
I want to go to Uncle Johnny. He's a good mentor. Uncle Johnny found out what I did. He talked to me about it, told me how to get on the right foot, and then went home. And then I dealt with it. To be honest. So sometimes, like I said, we have to become each other's family. Community. That's a perfect community, is when everybody can become family.
I think we need more Big Brother.
More cowbell.
Yeah, Big Brother program, like mentors in the community and whatnot. I think that would help with a lot of that. You get a single mom or something like that. I mean, they need to rely on somebody that's an adult, that's a leader probably in the community, and that they can reach out to, and instead of just their friend who over here is smoking marijuana or popping pills or whatever, drinking alcohol, be like, hey man, well, let's go have a drink, and trying to peer pressure them. We need somebody that's gonna step into that position.
I had a question about, I don't know who said this quote, I'm probably gonna butcher it, but it was something like, if there's no stars, they can't shine in the...
Read it up.
This is in the note, this is summarized.
Yeah.
Stars cannot shine without darkness.
Okay, there you go. So what I was thinking was, the problems that we have aren't going anywhere. I believe our greatest resource is our community. I believe there's more people who care than it feels like sometimes. And so my question is, I'm sure there's people out there like the suggestion box at work. But is there some sort of number that we can, if we have innovative ideas that we can, hey, I can go to this website and have some confidence that somebody's going to actually like think it through and look at this and say, hey, let's talk about your idea to maybe help the community. Just something that I thought about because
School's good.
We got it.
you got some ideas.
We have a start.
I
We
feel
have a
we're doing it
start.
right now.
We have a start, and I can actually say the Partners in Prevention portal, portal is a start. It gives you all the resources of if you are going through a mental health crisis, if you need clothing, if you need, you know, I think it goes on.
Education, housing,
Yeah,
finances,
anything.
yeah.
They have that there. Once again, we have to get it out. We have to push it out so that people can know that.
With more resources on it too.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of great ones, but like I was thinking the mentoring, you know.
But what I'm hearing him say is, where do you go to have the conversations with other people who are also interested in the same kinds of concerns or wanting to promote? And that, I have to say, that's what the coalition is all about.
Right, maybe it's a think tank. I mean, ultimately, it's having a conversation to start brainstorming potential ideas to add to the things that we could do to help.
I mean, we already have in place, our community partner meetings meet monthly and our work groups. And so that, the work groups are where we take these ideas, like the whole things you guys are talking about, I can take back and, you know, each of our staff members can take these back to our underage drinking work group, and we can say, this is what we heard when we were out at the town hall meeting. These are some of the things that we want to, you know, follow up with on. These are some of the new people that we met, and maybe we can invite them to a future meeting and talk about it a little bit more in depth. So the structure is there, and so that's what we're here to promote, is that through the coalition, we can continue these conversations and bring those new ideas forward.
And I'll also say, and I appreciate exactly what you're talking about, and what was mentioned about the stars shining at night. Reality is, TV 5, 12, 25 aren't here. Where are they? They're probably out highlighting the stuff that we're working on. And sometimes we feel that we are all alone. But I'm telling you point blank, there's some amazing community partners who do some amazing work. But the thugs get the headlines.
As far as a resource for coming up with ideas, I think you call any of these groups and organizations, because I know I'll praise GHS. Never met Dante day before today. And the fact that GHS and the school, so I can speak highly of them, they don't know how to say no. I mean, specifically to that resource. I don't know about having worked with.
They're the same way.
You don't say no. They say we may not know yet, or hey, they'll get you to somebody else. But I tell you, that's been a huge sigh of relief in the past couple of years for us on the school side to say, hey, I've got an idea. How about we do A, B, and C? How about we try this? Can we try? You know, we don't have that yet, but let me get back to you. And they circle back, or they get you in contact with the person that can. So as you talk about the network of resources, I think part of it is just being able to pick up, you know, be able to call them and say, hey, who do I talk to about an idea I've got to be able to help out with a thing? I think they're open arms and open ears.
I work with GHS.
He's planned it.
I knew that because I saw his shirt.
And I want to say, before we come in this room, there's every person that I come in contact with, I said, I'm here for the resources. And I'm so glad, which is like a major part of the topic, resources. I spent a year and a half in the college center. We did a heck of a job. Okay, so did I. But where I thought the fail was, the co-chair was there, they were hesitant on resources. Because they didn't know. I caught that during my time of need, going through that year and a half of, this is what I want to do, this is why I do it. This is like a drug rehabilitation, this is my detox. Now I need to go further in this program. So, but it's very interesting, I think.
And really what you're saying is what I talked about at the very beginning, the mental health system in transition.
Yes, the after, like once you're done, like what happens after.
And we're moving from this system to this type of system. We're building all the systems, but trying to make them talk. And that's really where, like we talked about, people fall through cracks, because the outreach centers are doing this, GHS is doing this, and they all are doing their part, but we're not a complete system yet.
And I need to be part of that system individualized. I I'm gonna make my own system work for me. I will rely on resources, but I'm gonna learn more. I want that, because we're talking about helping others. I can do that individually. But these resources, they give me that. They empower me. They give me that for myself. It's to move forward, do it.
What would help the most is, I did 5 years of substance treatment as well with individuals like yourself, is talking to each other, like promoting that in the community. Like, we need more community members to be like, hey, this is what worked for me, maybe it'll work for you, go try them, give them a call, give this a call. So like having more people like you educated on these resources and having you be able to talk to them, because they're not necessarily gonna come up to us and be like, hey, I know you got the goods on those resources, what's going on?
With me doing this, I make your guys' job easy.
Yeah.
Can I say something before we go?
Of course.
We all said some great stuff here tonight. But we missed a key piece of it too. And the faith-based community has played a role in it too. And I think that, this being a location, thank you for allowing us to be here, is a staple for still community. And I think that if we actually give services around the schools and the faith-based community, then we can actually impact more and more people in the community.
And we appreciate what you're doing very much.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys. Before we all close up shop today, we do have an evaluation. Are you speaking on that real quick?
Sure.
We're getting evaluated?
Make sure I get
So this QR code is for the evaluation for this event. Obviously, we know we would love to have more community members present, but we kind of knew going into this, based on the first one, that we might not. And that's why we built up this amazing panel to have a great discussion tonight. And so I think if there's one thing we can take away from this, it's the discussion that's happened here tonight and that hopefully continues to happen. And so we're just hoping that as we continue to do these every year, that we are able to make tweaks and improvements and just make them better. And then hopefully, you build it, they will come, maybe. So, but we still appreciate each and every person for making the time to be here tonight. Pastor Deuce, again, thank you so much for allowing us this Thank you for sharing your stories and your experiences and perspectives. And yeah, if you could do the evaluation, we'd greatly appreciate it. It helps us continue doing these. And with that, we all hope that you have a wonderful evening, and again, appreciate you coming tonight. So, thank you.